I found myself, I wanted to die back then. Like I ain't had no hope for nothing. Like I ain't care about nothing. I used to get bullied back then. Didn't nobody really care about me. I feel like I just how I felt. That's just my mindset. I ain't feel like nobody cared about me. Nobody wanted to listen to me. Didn't nobody feel where I came from. Didn't nobody even take the time out and ask me, was I okay?
Mr. Fisher, I'm going to ask you a question, and if you don't want to answer it, that's okay. But have you thought about what your parents may have experienced from an ACEs perspective that impacted how you were raised?
Well, I would say most definitely. I lost my dad. My dad died when I was 2. So that was one of the biggest ACEs that I had, because I was always trying to figure out, what would my dad do? And so by me having that to deal with from just about my whole life, I would look at other men, but they wasn't my dad. And some were great influences, positive, and some were negative. And with my mom, she was a single mom. And so some of the things that she had to do in raising us affected me, affected my sisters. And so that was a part of our life that we couldn't get rid of. But I do know that in the Afro-American community, it's very seldom that we get any counseling. And so whether it's death and all these different toxic things that happen in our lives are some of the things that mold us.
We took the ACEs test. Charlie had a event, and they took the ACEs test, and I saw people crying, and I'm like, and so I'm looking at my wife. She's taking the ACEs test, and I'm trying to get her numbers right. I'm trying to see what's wrong. I'm trying to see, And before I knew it, she had tears in her eyes, because she began to, her score was high, and she was like, oh man, now I understand so much, all right? But guess who else understood so much? When I came to know her ACEs score, I knew so much. I began to understand her in a different light. I began to see, well, wait a minute. She has been molded in a certain way. Her response that I'm like, why are you responding like that? Really is a normal response for somebody who has went through what she has went through. All right. I get it now. All right.
You can see by the magnitude that the problem is very broad, very large scale, tends to be a bit more predominant in people who are financially stressed, who are unemployed, who like the conditions we're faced with now. And I started looking at it in terms of its stress. These people are stressed. They're either ignored, they're isolated, they don't feel loved, they don't have confidence, and they may then also be physically abused, sexually abused. So there's a pretty horrendous list of things that can possibly go on.
When we talk about the 3 areas of childhood trauma, abuse, household dysfunction, and neglect, those are worldwide issues. If you're being raped, it doesn't matter what color you are, how much money you make, right? That's abuse. If your parents aren't in that household, whether it's because they're across the country vacationing or because they're in the corner on crack, it's still neglect. It doesn't matter. And when you talk about household dysfunction, if your parents are divorced, if you're in a single parent household, it still hurts, right? It's still trauma.
So I think there's a lot more out there than what most people realize. And it's not restricted to any one group of people. There's a lot of people out there have been traumatized along the way. And to look at it as a medical condition, which it is, and it's mental health. And I'm not an expert in it by any means, but we're fortunate to have experts in it and know how to treat it. And that's what we have to really push harder for, is to make more people understand that it's even more widespread than we might think it is, and that something positive can be done about it.
When I think about the 7 Ps, I think about the natural community supports, as the old African proverb is, that it takes a village to raise a child. Bringing the 7 Ps together to understand holistically what is happening in our community, when we all can speak with one voice and have one mind and one sound, we see better outcomes in our communities. And that is what I saw by bringing together the pastors, the police, and the politicians, and parent principals and proprietors around addressing ACEs. Is that if we all understood the evidence that was clearly stated by the Centers for Disease Control, that we needed to do something collectively to help make our communities safe, healthy, and nurturing environments.
Oh, Charlie, I remember the first time I met him, and he kind of took my breath away because of what he had been doing, and he actually invited me. This would have been in January of 2019. He said, "Dave, I'm having a seminar out here in Fraser, and I'd like you to come out and just sit, observe, listen, give me some inputs and stuff like that." And I was amazed at just the whole day, just the things that were covered, the people that participated, the learning I got out of it that says, look, there's a problem here. We've got to figure out how to address it. Charlie's already got the pathway marked. We just need to figure out how to get more people engaged and go down that same pathway.
Charlie Caswell has helped us rethink the whole process of understanding why things have happened the way they have, and then looking for ways to mitigate those. And it's, I think it just comes down to club engagement. Once individuals realize how big the need is and they get close enough to see where they can help, it's just an easy match. Rotarians tend to be people of action by nature, but that doesn't always mean that they know where to act. And ACEs prevention is such a key part of what Rotary-FYI is trying to accomplish. It matches up,
Why is ACEs awareness important to what needs to happen from a visibility and identification standpoint?
Because the science is clear that a child that has 4, 5, or 6 or more ACEs has less of a chance to compete. In fact, starting pre-K, they're as much as 18 months behind. They never catch up without a lot of help, which most of the time they don't get. They don't learn to read by 3rd grade level, and they get into high school trying to cope with their problem, which they don't understand. They don't know why they have all these problems. They end up getting on drugs and different things as a way of coping, and many of them end up in school to prison pipeline. So what Rotary-FYI is all about is identifying those children early, mitigating the ACEs that they have, to include bringing their families into it, because if the child has all these ACEs, the family has a problem. And so that's what we're all about. So all the other things we're doing at the different levels of leadership, if we don't identify the kids with the problem of ACEs, trauma, and then get them some wraparound services and involve their families, we will never get there, and we will always be fixing people rather than preventing it ever occurring in the first place.
we all saw and agreed with right away is that telehealth is definitely going to be the wave of the future as far as enabling a greater percentage of people to be served, okay, on a more timely basis, okay? And so that whole concept of being able to use technology to contact individuals and to interview them, document their situations, and be able to contemporaneously record that information and have it, logged back into our systems and all that, it all totally made sense. And to be able to partner with the University of Memphis, that's our flagship here in Memphis, to try to, lead us forward with a lot of these types of socioeconomic development. That was a great opportunity for Rotary-FYI.
Well, we're very excited about the collaboration between Rotary-FYI and the Clarity Project. We were lucky enough that this has spearheaded a program on campus where we're going to be able to offer a telehealth training, treatment, and research center. So this was kind of the very first project that spearheaded that entire piece on campus. And what we hope to do is in this academic year, we're going to be working with youth and adolescents with the Rotary-FYI and Pastor Caswell utilizing the Clarity assessment, but we hope to expand that work into the next year where we're able to serve not just youth and adolescents, but children, infants, families, and adults.
The neat and most important part of this is the Clarity Health Assessment scales, because from a visibility and identification and an investigation standpoint, it allows us to do it more broadly because it's via a smart app that someone can use on their phone to assess where they are, and we can quickly identify and bring the right sources of assistance to that individual.
But what I've learned is the number one thing that the youth we work with need is adult mentors. You cannot replace that. If you're growing up, as 95% of our kids are, in homes with no father figure, we need adult mentors because we're dealing with young kids, 10 to 18 years old, and they need an adult to hold them accountable, show them appropriate love, and engage them and listen to them. And that's just time. We're asking people to donate their time. And I've been mentoring a couple of our kids myself for 4 years now, and I've learned you don't have to be afraid of these kids because they're starved for that kind of attention. And so writing a check is great, and it's nice, and all nonprofits need that. But what we need more is your time. And if we can get that time, we can change our community.
At some point, we've all got to decide why we're here. We just got to decide why we're here. And it's fine that we have the ability to drive a car or to have a phone or to live in a nice home. But life has got to be more than that. It's got to be more about other people than ourselves. There are a number of worthy opportunities to give, but Rotary-FYI has, I believe, has tapped into an approach that will not only help this generation of young people, but it will help generations to come, because systemically speaking, there's really only one way to help. It's the old adage of, I can give somebody a fish and they can eat for that day, or I can teach them how to fish and then they can eat for the rest of their lives. If we can begin to attack these societal ills at a systemic level, there will be long-term consequences. But I've got to care enough about other people to do that, and Rotary does that.
Have someone to come alongside of you, like the Family Youth Initiative program, and tell them they matter enough. Let me provide this for you. You don't have to live like this. There is hope for you. you can make a better life for yourself. And I'm telling you, I am living proof of that. Nobody in my family has 2 doctorate degrees, but I do. Because you can overcome poverty, and it is a mentality. It is a psychological mentality.
Here's the problem. The problem is this. The problem is, it's not my problem. If that makes sense. In other words, if it's not happening to me, or if it's not happening on my turf, in my backyard, then it's not my problem. That is the problem. I think we have to take full ownership of this situation. Secondly, I think by doing that, Rotarians, even more concentrated Rotary-FYI board members, advocates, ambassadors, volunteers. We need to be part of the solution and never part of the problem. We need to be blameless, and what I mean by that is, if it's going to happen, it's not going to happen on my watch. In other words, if I'm a Memphian, or if I live in Shelby County in the Mid-South, then I'm going to take full responsibility. And it is my problem. And I'm going to step in the gap. I'm going to rise to the occasion. I'm going to suit up and get in the ball game. But if it's going to happen, it's not going to happen on my watch. I'm going to be a provider. I'm going to be a protector of all things good. And number 3, it's service above self. Sometimes what we need to do is less talk and just go serve. Sometimes we need to play out what we already know. Sometimes we need to roll up our sleeves and just go serve and not have another session on service. I think those are the answers.
What are your thoughts, being a Rotarian, of how we can make this a success by using the resources of the Rotarians nationally? But what are your thoughts?
That would be a great blessing to shed light and understanding on ACEs. If you want to stop it, if you want to make sure that children and generations, ACEs don't move forward, adverse childhood experiences don't continue from generation to generation to generation. The only way you can do that is you have to bring understanding and clarity, but also healing to people. And so if the Rotary could take that on, or would take that on, you would set up people to grab hold to their dreams. You really would be a peacemaker. And when I say a peacemaker, I'm talking about the inner peace. Because if you create inner peace in a person, you don't have to worry about them, you don't have to worry about outer turmoil. It don't take place. People are at ease within themselves. Man, that would be powerful.